Good morning, my fellow friends, gamers, enthusiasts, hobbyists, brigaders, what have you, so forth, and Sunday. This is Breakfast with the Fatman again. And as traditional, I like to think of, come up with things that are going to be, I don't know, controversial or not, debatable, probably, annoying, most likely. What are you going to do, right? It is the beast is the nature of the beast. Meanwhile, I have books sliding off the couch over here because I just did a rash of questions for the RPG a day challenge, and this ain't one of them. Though I did come up with something in one of those that made me think, maybe we need to go into a little more on this. I call it the pyramid of gaming. Now, for them of you younger gamers, new people into the industry, under the 30, let's just say under 30 folk, uh, you go into your game store today or you go online and you see scores and scores of games. I have heard of more games that I have never heard of in the past couple of weeks in the last 10 days of this challenge than I have in the last 10 years. And it's not that it's not surprising. I mean, I don't get out of my comfort zone, my box as much as I used to. They're a local gaming store. Uh, Now I haven't been out to Mayhem Comics in a while, but it's because it's so far on the other side of town. But JCD and Hobby, well, they've got about two or three good-sized shelves devoted to the traditional RPG material. One whole half of one shelf is dominated by Pathfinder at the moment. Almost an entire bookcase, front and back, is dominated by Warhammer 40,000, and that's mostly because I think the Jace people are big on it, and they sponsor gaming. Wargaming sessions at the store every week. So, and they don't do RPGs that way. Mayhem has a room where they can do some of that, but I don't know if they sponsor anything. And like I said, Mayhem is so far out on the other side of town, it's not practical for me to run out there, and my wife would get agitated if I asked her to sit there for 3 hours. So, and then she'd get agitated if I asked her if I could go do it for 3 hours. And she don't understand the hobby. What do you do? The big deal here, right? Pyramid of Gaming. When I was a lad, I was 10 years old. I got my first game system, and my friend Richie got a different one. And shortly after that, I found myself spending almost every available dollar I made when I was mowing lawns, buying new stuff, and it escalated from there. In and of itself, that became a pyramid. We're talking an inverted pyramid here. So when we talk about, or when the reference from old school gaming comes up, one of the things that the little corner blocks of that phrase, old school gaming, and is that we had a much narrower window of material available. If you go back to the 70s, in the late 60s, early 70s, when the first stuff was introduced, there are game systems that are sold I never heard of before. And then I got my hands on a few, like Judges Guild, Space Opera. Those two predate most of the modern stuff that I grew up with as a teenager. And then there's stuff even older than that. And I saw a few bits and pieces of it. And there's a reason why a lot of it might not be around. It was made out of very cheap material and very cheap covers, and looked like they were handmade. Be truthful, I think they did. They looked like they were run off of a mimeograph machine, which they probably were, and hand bound, stapled, and sold to the distributors, to the game companies, or not game companies at the time, but to bookstores at the time. There were a handful of gaming stores. When I first got introduced to Irish Dungeon, he had a large game. It was a fairly large store full of gaming material, and that told me at the age of 10 that there was a lot more going on out here than what I realized. Of course, he also carried miniatures and war games. A lot of the early stuff was based off of tabletop wargaming. So you had these enthusiasts who were different from the RPG stuff, role playing game people, because it's a completely different set of rules, and a lot of kind of people who will never admit to ever wanting to play an RPG or won't play an RPG will play a tabletop war game because it's less nerdy or geeky somehow. At the time, it was no different than being one of these people who like to dress up as a north or the south and go do mock battles and stuff. The LARPing, and you bring that term up to some of them folks, and they get belligerent. That is not. We're not doing that. We're not live role playing. What are you talking about? How dare you? We're reenacting history. Okay. Have your delusions however you need to make them. I don't care. Anyway, so our selections were much smaller, right? We had a handful and they were growing, and every year new stuff would come along, and some of the old stuff that caught on kept cranking out material. I've mentioned this. I've griped about it a few times. When you talk about the lack of money, you just don't have the resources to go out and buy $100 worth of stuff every week. And in my day, $100 would get you 5 or 6 books. Nowadays, it might get you two, maybe, because I've seen some books that are over the $100 mark, and I'm like, who are you catering to? Damn, really? Is it really? No, I'm sorry, but I'm not spending $100+ for any book. I don't care how great it is, and I will spend the $50, borrow it from somebody else, and go copy it and make it and bind it up because I'm not trying to resell it. I'm just trying to utilize it, right? I don't know. I have a tendency to believe that the cost of everything's gone up, but some things gone up faster than others, and all them fancy pictures and artworks and graphics, and the better materials, the better pages, the glossy work, the advertising, all that costs money. And while it makes for some beautiful stuff to sit on our shelf and collect dust, it's not necessary for enjoyment of the game system. And it's sad that a lot of people can't afford to buy the stuff like we used to buy the stuff. And I'm in that category. I just don't have the finances. I have more finances than I did then, but my needs are greater than they were, and I'm more responsible. I got to be more responsible, so I can't go out and throw $100 a week out the door on a hobby, any kind of hobby, you know. And there's other things that we had to give up to as we grow up. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. Uh, it is what it is. But the pyramid of gaming, this concept of every year there being more and more game systems, more and more choices, more and more options, where as people, players, enthusiasts, folks like myself come up with ideas and run with them, and other people who work for the corporations who churning out these game systems because volume equals money, and money equals growth, and everybody's happy, and that's where we end up today. Where I mentioned I mentioned some of these older game systems, people roll their eyes and look at them. So those were sold yesterday, and then I look at the new ones they're playing today, and I scratch my head. Scratch my head a lot here, right? I'm starting to recede, not going bald, just receding, like my grandfather. But I scratch my head thinking, you're playing a new system, and you spend what, $500, $300 to buy most of the core books. And for all intents and purposes, you basically got the same thing I got. Just a little newer package different with some slight adjustments to mechanics, their version of mechanics to avoid plagiarism kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Here, let's put it up right? Same thing happens to the big guy here. Big guy. We got early 90s, mid 90s, mid millennia, early millennia, mid early millennia, and then you got the 4.0, which I don't own, which is mid millennia, and then you got the 5.0, which is current, right? So they produced, and I don't have the first edition. Like I said, my mother got into a religious kick when I was 13 or 14, and made me burn the damn things. That's how I ended up with this system, because the first edition stuff had already started going off. Started going off the shelf, and this was the new version coming out, the updated, modernized, blah blah, where they've taken all these adjustments and made new things, and it's a good stuff. But what did I pay? $15 for this? Ooh, $20 for this thing, and I got it the year it came out. So what is it? 1989, $20. All right, that's just the one book. Come on, you stay out of that. You don't want that. It's my breakfast cereal, not your breakfast cereal. Got all your cat. All right, and then here's this one here, and this one was, well, $20. See, they managed to keep the price down. You know, what is that? Can't find this stupid thing. Oh, I need a bigger. Hey, you. Hey, come on. Be nice. The other times you don't like the stuff. Go figure. Oh, shoot. I know it's here. I'm just not finding the published date. Hey, wow. I forgot that. You know what happens when you flip through stuff you haven't been through in a while? Got a character creation disc on the back of that. This is probably early 90s. Still $20, right? And this one here, $29.95, $30 for this version, and printed in the United States. Blah blah blah. By this time, Wizards of the Coast, the D20 system, Wizards of the Coast has bought up TSR, so now this was a new label. For Pete's sake, and that might be the cover that's taped up. You know. Yeah, well, I'm playing up too much time. But anyway, so what we end up with is a slew of books. A lot of them are basically replacing original or earlier versions, and they bring in, say, 20% new stuff and about 25%, 15% adjustments to old stuff. So we've included things that we've seen the progression of the skill sets grew smaller and more condensed. We saw the introduction of feats. We saw the introduction of a wider character class options in the supplement books. We saw the prestige class, the epic stuff come out because players wanted to continue playing their characters. They wanted to get them bigger and more powerful, and that's how they accomplished it. And then other people come out and says, there's so much I don't like about this. I'm going to make my own. Or another guy come along and says, I just want to make my own. And so they made their own. They set it in their own world. They created a set of stuff to go with it that's different enough from the earlier stuff to allow them to avoid plagiarism. At the same time, it's basically a clone of something else, something early. I'm sorry, but it is. Modern Star Wars RPG produced by Wizards of the Coast is built on the back of the West End Games version, which itself, in turn, was built on the back of things like Star Frontiers and Space Opera. Right? Your most of your hack and slash and sword and sorcery stuff today is built on Dungeons and Dragons, which built on the back of Dungeons and Dragons, which in turn was built on the original swords and sorcery and a couple other earlier game systems, Judges Guilds and things I'm not familiar with. I know they exist. I just can't put my finger on the name of them at the moment. So. And as it goes, more and more and more come out. They get bigger and bigger and bigger. Your selection goes up. So when I get somebody who's under 30 going, oh, old school, I want to play some of this OSR stuff, blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking at them sideways thinking, I got bookcases of this stuff. And you guys talking about you went out and bought a brand new book that's a OSR, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, yeah, there's probably a million guys like me with boxes of this stuff sitting in their basement. If you go on YouTube or eBay or Amazon, you can find it. You can buy all the old school stuff you want, more or less, if you know what you're looking for, if you got the name for it, or you go get the PDF version of it. That's Samwise 7's got a slew of them, from what he says. And hey, there you go. It's a way to save a dime. Nothing wrong with that, right? So we talk about a big choice of options that we didn't have 30 years ago or 20 years ago or 40 years ago. Each decade sees a wider range. And then there's the breakouts and the stuff into the completely different genres that they didn't do at the back in the day or they didn't do well. And you look at those, your Warhammer and your Vampire the Masquerade, and, White Wolf's got a slew of things, Werewolf Apocalypse, and geez, I can't put my name on the post-apocalyptic. No, the Walking, their version of the Walking Dead game system. You know, and then tomorrow, a decade from now, how many more of my own game system will be on the shelves at some damn point if I have to sell them myself on eBay? The 100 other guys just like me are cranking their own out and envisioning themselves. So and let me touch on that for a minute. I've read a number of books on the concept of writing a book. Right here is how this breaks down. A million people come up with the idea, I want to write a book, or they tell everybody, I want to write a book. 100,000 people actually sit down and actually just start writing a book. They start putting things down on paper. About 10,000 of those people will complete a manuscript. They will get a manuscript, and maybe 1,000 people will go through the hassle of re-editing and rewriting that thing 2 or 3 or 4 or a dozen times to take, and then start looking for an editor or an agent. Out of those 1,000 people, 100 people will actually persist in getting a fairly decent finished product and locating somebody to help them polish it and put it on the market. Of those 100 people, 10 people will see something sell. They will get it on the market and it will take off. And maybe one person will be the next J.K. Rowling's or the J.R. Tolkien or whatever, or George Martin, and bang out a true box office hit, a true winner. So 300 million people, 30 crack novelists get a big break. So, but, but, don't be the million. Get the stuff on paper. Don't be the 100,000. Polish it, finish it, work at it till it's done. There's best as you can get it done. Don't be the 10,000. Get the thing out there. Even if you got to package it and sell it yourself. You may not be that number one. There's no reason why you can't be number two. Right? Okay, bad joke. Bad humor there. Okay. So, anyway, give that some thought. Pyramid of books. How much choice changes our perspective of things. Too many types of ketchup at the store shelf. Then it's just a matter of flavor, isn't it? Flavor and price.